For this video, I'm going to be discussing important components of a camera, such as ISO, shutter speed, aperture, and frame rate. And I will be discussing the functions and uses of each component. ISO is a core factor of photography. It's your camera's sensitivity to light, specifically the sensor's sensitivity to light. The higher the ISO, the brighter. So essentially, ISO is how you dictate the brightness or darkness of your images. For instance, if you're in a dark room, you would increase ISO if you can't see the subject that is being taken. But if you want a darker image in a lighter room, you would lower down your ISO to make it have a dark appearance. This does come at a cost to the photo's clearness or how good of a photo it is. This is due to the visible distortion or noise or grain, as people would call it. This was due to the lack of light. So, to get clear images, you should try and keep your ISO low, but if needed and for the effect, ISO can be turned up to change the course of an image. In the following few seconds, I will be attaching images on how this technique is utilized. The next important component of photography is shutter speed. Shutter speed is the length of time your camera shutter is open, exposing light onto the camera sensor. This is essentially how long your camera is taking a photo for. It depends on preference, but each timing or length your camera takes a photo of changes the course of an image. With the photos, you can take an image with a shorter shutter speed, which could be best displayed with moving animals or cars to catch the image still in the moment. Whereas a higher shutter speed can be more of an experimental photography. Could be more blurry. You could use light to your advantage with this in a dark room, and you can make images with light with a high shutter speed. With a long shutter speed, you would have motion blur, so you could use this in big cities where there'd be people walking around, and you'd be able to capture the motion blur. And as stated prior to this, fast shutter speed can capture frozen images, such as animals moving or cars or very different objects that are in movement, or just a regular portrait. It depends on what you'd like to take photos of. In the following few seconds, I will be attaching images on how this technique is utilized. The next important aspect of photography is the aperture of your camera. The aperture is the size of your lens's opening. This is crucial to photography as it allows a certain amount of light to pass through your sensor. This is very similar to the human eye. Aperture focuses on the focused part of the image and either blurs the rest of the image or makes it clearer. It depends on whether you have a lower aperture or a higher aperture. Aperture is very crucial in portrait pictures, in close-up pictures. It's as if you are unfocused on the rest of an image and just one little piece, or you have the whole image in focus. This is seen in lots of nature photography with small animals in a green surrounding, which is clear due to the color, and it is used in, as said, portrait images to have the face as the focus of the image instead of the background. This is very powerful in those aspects. In the following few seconds, I will be attaching images on how this technique is utilized. The next important aspect of photography would be frame per second or frame rate, which is more of a videography feature. So frame rate is important to videography, as the higher the frame rate, the more pictures or frames are taken, which can create slow motion and faster motion videos. It depends on what you'd like to use and how you'd like to use frame rate. This isn't very important to what we're learning, but is very important to know about, as this is basic photography and camera knowledge. In the following few seconds, I will be attaching images on how this technique is utilized. I'd like to thank you for watching my video on photography basics.